The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
We will get to All-Star Weekend. There is a lot to unpack there. Some good, some bad, like the dunk contest. Enough already with that. There is some football to discuss. And how about Michael Jordan pulling kind of a Joe Gibbs there, right? Joe Gibbs gets into the racing business after winning 3 Super Bowl championships. Michael Jordan, 6 NBA championships, regarded as the best of all time. Now he's a champion NASCAR owner. Everything he touches turns to gold. There's a lot to talk about from football this weekend. I mean, let's face it, there is that football withdrawal that we all went through over the past few days. There was no game. There'd been no game the week before the Super Bowl, but we knew that the Super Bowl was coming, and we did have a Super Bowl that was kind of right? But dominating defensive performance from Seattle. But there is something to talk about, unfortunately, today that hits a lot of people like me and maybe like you if you were a fan of the Redskins in the 1990s when they were not good. They did win the division championship in 1999 and actually had a pretty decent season, especially compared to the ones that they had before, a complete rebuild under Norv Turner starting in 1994. And by the time they got to the 1999 season and Dan Snyder couldn't start to mess with things, that was his first season as owner of the team. It was too late for him to do much damage because he wasn't approved until late May, and the season started with training camp like 6 weeks later. You still flushed Charlie Casserly out of there, which was really stupid. But the deals that Casserly made with the New Orleans Saints, when, remember, Mike Ditka had to have Ricky Williams, so the Redskins traded the rights to Williams to the Saints and got their entire draft. It's one of the most bizarre draft day things that's ever happened, but they got his entire draft, and Charlie did a good job of maneuvering those picks to get some good players, including Champ Bailey, who's now in the Hall of Fame, and he got Brad Johnson in a trade using some of those picks with Minnesota. He had a great year in 94. They had 4,000 yards, and they won 10 games and actually won a playoff game. But, other than that, the 90s were kind of and Trey Johnson is somewhat symbolic of that. 1994, Norv takes over, and the first player that he takes is Heath Shuler. Well, we all know what happened there. Heath Shuler turned out to be a bust. He thought he was getting Troy Aikman. He didn't even get Troy Donahue. He was terrible. And in the second round, they took a guard from Temple, and Temple had been a terrible team, but he was so much of a standout, Trey Johnson, that he was like the first or second pick of the second round of the draft. And he was big, came into the league at 340. I mean, now it's somewhat common to get offensive linemen that size. 30 years ago, that was really big. And if they came in at that size, they were kind of sloppy fat. He wasn't. He was kind of chiseled, if you could use that word, at 340 pounds. He eventually dropped about 10 or 15 pounds to get down to what he was comfortable playing at. But he wasn't going to go much below that. And I'll tell you something. I did a television show with the Redskins in 2000, which would have been his final year before he went to Cleveland. Then he came back for a year, and that's all part of his story too. But in television, they have what they call lavalier microphones. They have a cord which they run up your shirt. And we're getting set up to do the TV show, and they're putting on the lavalier microphone on him, which required him to lift up his shirt. And I looked at his stomach, and I thought, whoa, that doesn't look like a 340-pound man. And he didn't. He carried that weight, was great as a pulling guard, and was a terrific player. But that really doesn't tell the story. And the story has a tragic end. Over the weekend, he passed away at the age of 54, which is way too young for anyone. And he left behind 4 kids who he was totally devoted to. He had told them, I believe, they didn't want them to play football. He knew the pain that was involved in that and the toll that it took on his body when he was playing. And they wound up playing lacrosse. I think all 4 of them did. And I believe his daughter became a lacrosse star in college. He was a terrific athlete. But most importantly, he was a really terrific man. He comes from a time which is just in the crossover of what we have now, where you make so much money that if you do things properly, you don't have to take a regular job for the rest of your life. Some want to do that. Some get into coaching. Some get into business. But a job where you're showing up on a regular schedule, most guys don't do that. I'm generalizing here, but a player of Trey Johnson's ability, where he made a Pro Bowl, played 9 years in the NFL. I want to conservatively say he made between $8 and $10 million playing. I don't think that's unrealistic. He didn't make the kind of money they make now, but $8 to $10 million is more than most of us will make in our lifetime. And he did something that you don't often see. He was very interested in education. He came to the NFL at a Temple, and this is a period of time when I don't know if he redshirted or not, but he came with a master's degree in social work as well as his undergraduate degree at Temple, and then along the way got a master's degree in education and became a history teacher at Landon. I don't know if he did anything with the football team. My impression is he wanted to get away from football after he finished playing, and he was a history teacher and concentrated on raising his children. And I think that's such an admirable thing, and blending into the community. How many ex-players really do that in that way, that you would see him in the grocery store, or you'd see him in the mall, or people who had kids who played lacrosse. He's standing on the sidelines with the rest of them, watching his kids play. Sort of just a regular guy who did not look like a regular guy. I mean, he was 350 pounds and had been an all-pro, or at least a Pro Bowl football player. And I think that this is an era where you don't often see that. And I think you saw that with Trey Johnson. And remember this, and this is kind of the life that these guys live. In the 2000 season, that was the year that Norv Turner got fired with a 7-6 record. Fairly early in that year, like 5 or 6 games in, he hurt his knee and was out for the year. And I believe he wanted to stay. They chose not to re-sign him, not to take the chance. He signed with Cleveland as a free agent. And he only wound up playing about 5 or 6 games for them because of knee trouble. He came back for one more year with the Redskins, which would have been 2002, which would have been Spurrier year number 1, and only managed to play a handful of games. His knee was bothering him. And a year later, I saw him working out at Philbin's gym. And John Philbin, one of the top trainers from this area, he at one point was the trainer for the Nationals. I think he may be doing it for the Padres now. He trained Olympic athletes, and he had a very high-level gym, which they did some advertising with us, and schlubs like me could actually work out there too. And I saw him at the bench press, and he was lifting the entire stack. And I said, "How come you're not still in the NFL?" And he said, well, going to Cleveland and playing that year was a mistake, that he probably should have rested his knee for that full season and then could have come back and either played with Cleveland or Washington. I think it's Cleveland released him, and he played one more year here. But you look at a person like that and you say, wow, immediately you know that this is not an average human being because of his size and strength. But after football, he was able to become this person who could be like your neighbor, who could teach your kids, who you'd see in the grocery store, you'd see on the sidelines at games. And that's unusual. That's unusual. There's a great story that was written by Liz Clark when he was named to the Pro Bowl in 2000. So we're going back 26 years after the 99 season. And she mentions his size early on, wears a size 60 suit jacket, but also has great athletic ability, known for his ability to pull and opening holes for Stephen Davis, who that season rushed for 17 touchdowns and a team record 1,400 yards. I think that was broken some years later, but for initially he held the record. I think broke John Riggins' record. And at that point, he was this is 26 years ago. He had not been married, but he had a child in Peekskill, New York, and he would take the train after usually a light practice and a physical on Monday, and they had Tuesday off. He'd take the train up to Peekskill, see his son, come back Tuesday night, and get ready for the next game. He lived in a townhouse in Mitchellville, and he had a team of people to work with him. He had a personal assistant, an agent, a pair of financial advisors, and a cousin who had moved in with him to take care of a lot of things that he didn't have time for outside of football. And this day that Liz Clark was shadowing him, he had use of a limousine and a chauffeur. He didn't rent that. It was courtesy of the quarterback club, which was going to honor him that night at a banquet. So he took advantage of it and took his 10-week-old English bulldog to a veterinarian appointment. And she writes, Johnson toys briefly with the idea of hiring a driver for his daily commute to Redskin Park in Ashburn before dismissing it as a foolish expense that would only reinforce stereotypes that he finds laughable. I think they would have an endless supply of money. He says, they think we have an endless supply of money, and it doesn't work that way. Talked about his work ethic, showing up at the park to lift weights at 6:30 every morning, and talking about the fact that he didn't want his son, at that point he only had one child, 6 years old, didn't want him to play football. I mean, that's a guy who made his living in the sport. Probably this child had pretty good size because of the dad. Didn't want to do that. He had real estate investments and a foundation. He had underwritten summer camps for needy kids. And he was prodded by a mother who punished him for grades below 80, earned his master's degree in social work before entering the NFL draft. These are things that should be admired, and people should be talking about a person like this who didn't show off his football. You knew from his size football was his business, but he said, football is what I do. It does not define me. I get enough football at work. And at his home, she said, very little that reflected that he was a football player. Just, such a tragedy, such a good person. And like you say, attention should be paid. Attention should be paid to someone who worked hard at his craft as a football player, then left that behind and got into a business that doesn't pay all that well. Yeah, my son is a teacher. I know what they make, and you got to have a calling for that. And he did. And he put in the work and he put in the effort. And, most people I know who have, mentioned him on social media knew him in the same way that I knew him. Somebody that you could talk to about something else besides football. I remember during the George Floyd incident, I had him on to talk about how he was teaching his kids about that and how they were handling that. Just a really smart and good man, and leaves behind 4 children and a wife and a lot of memories for a lot of people. All right, let me transition to the Maryland game yesterday. I watched most of it. They lost at Rutgers. Yeah, okay, Rutgers not an easy place to play. And the final score kind of tells you what kind of a game it was. Rutgers won 68-57. It was tied at the half, but it always seemed like Rutgers had them at arm's length, and they opened up a lead in the second half, and they never gave it up. I think Maryland got as close as like 5, and that's what it was. And they shot, as they often do, terribly. 33% from the field, even worse from 3, 7 of 30 on the night. But here's the thing. Buzz Williams, okay, does things a little bit differently. He's a little quirky. But this was a noon game at Rutgers, and they didn't travel the morning of the game, though they could have. It's like a 3.5-hour drive from College Park. But they were there on Saturday, and he moved up his schedule to accommodate the noon tip. Like, they do things in a certain way for every game, so he just backed things up. Well, they had a chapel service at 5:30. Public University, I can't imagine a chapel service is mandatory. I don't know how that works. I'm not sure I would be on board with that, but okay, that's part of it. 5:30 in the morning, chapel service. Those guys aren't used to being up at that time of the day. Then they have a shoot-around at 6:30. Really need a shoot-around for a noon game? Okay, have a shoot-around noon game. Noon game comes, and again, they were just seemingly a step slow. When your shots are that bad, it often means tired legs. This was Williams on why he did what he did going into this game.
We haven't always stayed at hotels that have big rooms throughout my career. But our itinerary is always based on game time, not just day of, but 2 days before and 1 day before. And so at Minnesota, we played a 1 o'clock tip. So I think that we had Chapel at 6:01, Rebounding Clips at 6:31, and then we're in the gym at Minnesota at 7:01. And so this morning it was 5:31, Chapel 6:01, Rebounding Clips 6:31 here in the gym.
Why? And I guess the 01 is so nobody's late. I don't know. But it's, again, getting college kids up at 5:30 in the morning on a Sunday for, freedom of religion for everybody, for sure. And if you want to attend chapel service, that's fine. But I don't know if mandatory, I don't know. He didn't phrase it mandatory. Just seems like it's awfully early. And a shoot around at 6:30. What? Maybe that's something you do every game. Athletes like routines. But I don't think athletes like that time of the day. It's just me. If it was a bunch of older cockers, a bunch of boomers like me, sure. 5:30 in the morning, I'm always up at 5:30 in the morning. That's no problem. But seems like college kids, and I remember being a college kid once and didn't really know that time of day. So it is what it is. They're 10 and 15, which means they have to win the last 6 just to finish over 500. They're 3-11 in the league. They got another game they could possibly win. Northwestern's terrible. They play there Wednesday, and then they would have, I guess, 3 home games left and another game or something like that. But it's been a miserable season, and some of the stuff from Buzz Williams has me scratching my head. NBA All-Star Game, not as bad as we thought. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So we went into this NBA All-Star Game weekend saying, all right, this has got to be it. I mean, they've done away with the Pro Bowl. Players clearly don't care. The slam dunk contest, and that was abysmal. They got to do away with that. The winner of the slam dunk contest, because Mac McClung didn't participate. Now, Mac McClung, I think, has played a total of about 7 or 8 games in the NBA since he came in 6 or 7 years ago. I remember he played at Georgetown for a couple of years, and then he went to Texas Tech, and he came out for the NBA draft. I don't think anybody took him. And he's had a couple of 2-way contracts and has made brief appearances for a couple of teams. But he's won the slam dunk contest the last 3 years. And he said, I'm not going to do it again because I want people to take me seriously as an NBA player. Well, nobody's going to take you seriously. They've already kicked the tires on you. You're not an NBA player. You got one specific skill. You're able to cash in on it at the slam dunk contest. That's good. You ought to keep doing that. But he chose not to. So the winner this year was from the Miami Heat. He hadn't played a whole lot more than Mac McClung. He's played 22 games for the Heat this year, averaging 3.1 points a game. Keshad Johnson with just dunks that would, put you to sleep. They seemingly have done away with jumping over cars and people and stuff, so they seem to be run-of-the-mill dunks. And then he had this dance celebration, which was far more exciting than his dunk. Carter Bryant from San Antonio, another guy I've never really paid much attention to. He was in it. Jackson Hayes. Now, the only reason I know Jackson Hayes from the Lakers, that's the guy who got suspended for shoving the Wizards mascot. Yeah, that's his claim to fame. So those are your slam dunk participants. LeBron's not in it, has never been in it. Michael Jordan was in it. He participated. There have been superstars who have been in the slam dunk contest. And by the way, I finished watching the ABA series called Soul Power, which is on Prime. And even if you're not old enough to remember the ABA, which merged with the NBA 50 years ago, there's some really interesting nuggets in there. And the original slam dunk contest started with the ABA All-Star Game, the last one in 1976. And the league was so hurting for money at that time that they didn't have money for a halftime act. They couldn't, bring in a musical act. Or there was no such thing as the red panda, the woman on the unicycle who throws plates in the air and stuff like that. No, so what they said was, well, let's do the best we can here, and we'll have a slam dunk contest. Well, you had the best slam dunkers were in this. including David Thompson, David Skywalker Thompson. And the winner of the slam dunk contest, as he should have been the winner, because he is the one who really elevated the dunk to another level in the NBA, that's Dr. J. And Dr. J won the first slam dunk contest in 1976, last ABA All-Star game, by taking off from the foul line and dunking. And Michael Jordan, when he won the slam dunk contest, that was his winning dunk. You got to really be able to jump. And he did. And he took off from the foul line and dunked. And so when the merger happened, the NBA said, we got to have that too. And it's outlived its usefulness. I mean, you can't have a slam dunk contest won by Kashad Johnson, who plays almost never for the Miami Heat. That's done. Damian Lillard won the three-point shootout. Now, he's not playing this year, hasn't played a game because he's rehabbing an Achilles injury. Okay. Again, Steph Curry says he's going to participate next year. That also has outlived its usefulness because we see guys shooting three-pointers all the time now, and Steph Curry shoots from like half court. When Larry Bird won the three-point shootout, he never took off his warm-up, which is a real flex move. That was smart. And, he walked in the locker room, said who's finishing second, and he won. Well, Larry was taking 2 or 3 threes a game. It's a different game, so I think both of those can go. The surprise was the All-Star game itself, and they went to this new format this year. I don't fully understand it, but it involved 20-minute games. You had international team, and you had 2 American teams, one kind of old, one kind of young, and it went in a round robin, and the games were close except for the final. And the final was won by the American team, which featured Anthony Edwards, who was the MVP of the game. Now, he's an interesting fellow. Great player, obviously, an Olympian, and part of the Minnesota Timberwolves, who made a surprise run to the finals a couple years ago. And he's got personality. And this was the Saturday interviews that the players did with Edwards asked this question.
The NBA Research and Development Department ranked you the 7th hottest NBA player of all time. Do you agree with that data, or you think it's skewed?
You said what?
The NBA Research and Development Department listed you as the 7th hottest player of all time. Do you agree?
When you say hot, what you mean? You talking about what, basketball?
Handsome, attractive.
Oh, man. My old lady ain't gonna like that. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, My mom and dad did a pretty good job, but, my old lady ain't gonna like that, though. She be wanting me to, suppress this shit I got. I be trying to hide it. Be trying to be ugly for these folk, but they ain't wrong, though. They probably got me a little low on the list, honestly.
That's fun. And then this is what made headlines. Anthony Edwards, this is before the game, asked this question.
Everybody's talking about how the All-Star game is not as competitive as it used to be. Is that something that's on your mind? Are y'all going to give more effort this year, or is it kind of like it is what it is at this point?
Yeah, it is what it is at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah. As he likes to say, I ain't lying. He was honest about that. Nah, you're probably going to see the same old thing. Well, guess what? We didn't. We saw, and it wasn't the most competitive of All-Star games used to be competitive. This wasn't that, but at least it resembled real basketball, which it hadn't in recent years. When they had the old East-West format, I think the last time they tried it, the winning team had 200 points. That's not basketball. This was close to it. And Edwards, who said, you're not going to see much, actually did give an effort. He was the MVP, finishing with 32 points, and then appeared later on NBA TV talking about, hey, this actually was competitive.
What led to the event being so good today?
I like the format. I'm going to go with the format. I ain't going to lie. I like the format.
Yeah.
I ain't really know too much how to play it, but... Yeah.
Hey, and you were ready from jump. Literally, the opening jump, you against Wemby, the tone was set.
Yeah, for sure. Me versus Wemby.
You ain't think you was going to get the jump ball, though?
No. I knew I wasn't winning that.
Hey, in the introduction, the start line introduction, they asked everybody where they from on the Videotron. Where they from? Arizona, their colleges. What'd you say? What was your answer?
A-Town.
No, you said worldwide.
You said worldwide.
Is that what you said? I don't remember. Worldwide. I don't remember. Well, y'all want to know where I'm from? Y'all know what's going on. It ain't hard to see it. Right. Ray Charles can see this.
Hey, listen, we've been craving for competitive basketball.
Yeah.
Did you think it was going to get to this point?
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Like I said a couple interviews ago, like Wemby, he came out playing hard. So you know what I'm saying? We ain't finna let him outplay us. So you know what I'm saying? We had to turn up.
Speaking of that, you have the award named after Kobe. You won it 4 times. How does it feel like to continue that legacy?
I'm not gonna lie, it feel good. Like, all my people was like, man, go for MVP, and I was kind of like downplaying it. But when I came out here and got warm and started playing, I was like, man, I'm gonna try to do something.
Yeah, he did. So for a guy who said, yeah, well, it is what it is, actually gave you something. And he referenced Wemby. And this may be, when we look back on it, the moment that the All-Star game was saved, and it was saved by a player who's, if he stays healthy, is going to go on to be one of the top players of the next generation and maybe go down as one of the best in history. We've never seen a skill set quite like this. We've seen size. Ralph Sampson was this size, but they wouldn't let him play like this. You know, Ralph Sampson came along in an era where big men had to play the post. Well, Wemby's all over the place. He can play like a guard at times. He can play like a forward. He blocks shots. He rebounds. He's got unbelievable skills. And what happened, you heard Edwards say, you know, Wemby set the tone. Well, Victor Wembanyama went up in a jump with Edwards, who's probably like 6'5", and he tipped it to teammate Jamal Murray, who sprinted until he got underneath the rim. Then he sealed off, this is Wembanyama, sealed off Cade Cunningham, begged for the ball. Murray whipped a pass that Wembanyama seemingly in one motion caught and then dunked. And was like, oh, okay, this is on. And this is a guy who's 22 years old, you know, he's from France. He didn't play in the All-Star game last year because he was hurt. But what they did, is, there were 12-minute games. I said 12-minute games, which, you know, essentially gave them fourth quarter games. That's when most guys play hard in the NBA these days. The first 3 games were decided on the final basket. First one went into overtime. The championship game was a blowout. But, you know, this is what Wembanyama said. He said, I think exclamation point plays, playing in a solid manner and sharing the ball with energy. If you share that energy, people will feel like they have a responsibility to share it with you. So it was like, okay, here's the opening tip-off. Everybody's laughing because it's a guy, you know, tipping off against a guy a foot shorter than him. And then they start to play, and Wembanyama is like, hey, you know, this is not going to be a joke. It's like it's like the Rocky line. You know, he doesn't know it's a show. He thinks it's a fight, right? That's when Rocky's fighting Apollo Creed. Like Creed's manager goes, hey, this guy's serious. He thinks he can win. Well, the Wembanyama showed the rest of the players that, yes, you can be competitive. So is this going to create enormous excitement for the All-Star game next year? No. But it looked like it was going to go the way of the Pro Bowl, and I think based on what we saw yesterday, it's going to come back, whether you like it or not, you know, and it's filler TV. It's like, you know, the stuff that they fill you up on bread at the table so you don't eat all the steak at the all-you-can-eat, I guess, if that's an analogy. But there's, you know, we don't have football, so we have this in February, and if it's going to be competitive, it's going to be better than the way it used to be. Now, the big issue for the NBA, not the All-Star game. The biggest issue is the tanking. You got 8 teams which are openly tanking, and just before the All-Star break started, they kind of tried to tuck this away. Utah got fined $500,000 for resting star players at the end of games. They're still sometimes winning when they do that. And they had been popped for this last year. And then Indiana got popped for $100,000. I think the Wizards probably are deserving of this as well. They have not been fined yet. But there is a clear tanking problem going on in the NFL, and at his State of the Game address on Saturday, Adam Silver said, yeah, it's bad and maybe as bad as it's ever been.
Are we seeing behavior that is worse this year than we've seen in recent memory? Yes, is my view. And which was what led to those fines, and not just those fines, but to my statement that we're going to be looking more closely at the totality of all the circumstances this season in terms of teams' behavior, and very intentionally wanted teams to be on notice. And there is a bit of a note when you see it quality to this. I mean, we spend a lot of time at the league office going back and forth with teams on injury reports, on coaches' decisions. It's not a position necessarily we want to be in, but I'd say also to address your question, it's not what the fans want at the end of the day, although my caveat is, and this is where teams are in a difficult place, many of you in this room have written, and understandably about our teams, that the worst place to be, for example, is to be a middle-of-the-road team, either be great or be bad, because then that will help you with the draft. And so in many cases, you have fans of those teams, maybe it's not what they want to pay for to see poor performance on the floor, but they're actually rooting for their teams in some cases to be bad, to improve their draft chances. So I think we're coming at it I'd say in two ways. One is, again, focusing on the here and now, the behavior we're seeing from our teams, and doing whatever we can to remind them of what their obligation is to the fans and to their partner teams. But number two, as I also said in that statement, the competition committee started earlier this year re-examining the whole approach to how the draft lottery works. And ultimately, any changes will require a vote of the Board of Governors, so it then will need to go in front of the board. But there have been lots of different ideas out there over the years, not just necessarily changing the draft lottery odds yet once again, but looking at whether there's a better system here to try to align incentives. I think the point about this year, when you look at totality of the circumstances, I mean, of course, I'm paying attention to what's happening, and the perception is you have a very deep draft class this year. A perception, who knows whether this will be the reality, that the next 2 years' draft classes aren't as good. There's no doubt that's affecting the behavior of our teams. But at the end of the day, I think there needs to. I think all the teams need to step back, the ownership of those teams, and just as a reminder that we're all in this together, that we want to have fair competition, we want to have fair systems, and to keep an eye on the fans, most importantly, and their expectation that we're going to be putting the best product forward.
So that was 2 minutes and 46 seconds of Adam Silver saying, yeah, it's really bad. We haven't seen it this bad. But he goes on to kind of defend it by saying, well, the thing that the fans really don't want is a team that, is kind of in the middle, like makes the first round and goes out, which is the world that Wizards Bullets fans have lived in forever since they won the championship in 1978, went back in 79, so we're talking almost 50 years ago. The high water marks have been the Gilbert Arenas era and the John Wall era. And the climax of each of them was getting close but not making the conference finals. That's it. Nobody would say those were glory years. They celebrate them. They bring these guys back for honorariums, and they haven't gone as far as retiring jerseys or anything like that. But that's what Wizards fans who are probably under the age of 60 can celebrate. That's it. And that's not good enough, as Silver points out. So, like, for example, in the NFL, you can have a team that wins 10 games and has to play all the playoff games on the road, and they can still win the Super Bowl. You can finish 10-7 and go into the playoffs, and there is a realistic chance you're going to win the Super Bowl. If you win 46 games in the NBA, or if you get in the play-in, you got no chance to win the championship. It doesn't happen. Occasionally a 7th or 8th seed will advance, and since some star players don't take the regular season seriously, they go in as a 7th seed, and they make some noise in the playoffs now like they used to. But it's almost an impossible situation. And in the NBA, one player can make an enormous difference. Now, occasionally that'll happen in football. If you're in a position to draft a great quarterback, you can do that. But football, one player doesn't make the difference that in the NBA. Look at the San Antonio Spurs. San Antonio Spurs were a dynasty because they had Tim Duncan and David Robinson. David Robinson at the beginning, but ultimately Tim Duncan with all 5 championships. And they just happened to hit the inside straight. In a year that Robinson was hurt, because they were a good team with him, he was hurt, so they were bad. They get into the lottery. You have other teams that are, below them in the standings, but the ping pong balls land up right. And, hey, what do you know? David Robinson is healthy, and you got Tim Duncan. and you got 5 championships. You can do that. Then that doesn't work that way in football unless you get that quarterback. But even Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is one of those guys. Cincinnati's made it once. They lost, and they don't show much sign of getting back. You know, some things could go right, but reality is in basketball, one guy can change the entire fortunes of the franchise. So what's the answer? The nation turns its lonely eyes to Noah Eagle, who's all of 29 years old, Ian Eagle's kid, who's a rising star. He called the All-Star game last night on NBC. He was on with Dan Patrick on Friday with the question, how do you fix the tanking?
I really don't think there is one, because I've gone through every combination and permutation you could think, and all the ones I've heard, some really creative, the ones that I like. There's one that I know has at least had some preliminary discussion, according to reports, about potentially having some kind of tournament or play to get the number 1 pick. So now there's an incentive for the teams. The problem is, what's the incentive for the players that are on those teams, that are on expiring contracts?
Yeah.
Why do they care?
Yeah.
It's the same idea of, that's what everybody always says with the NFL. Everyone's, oh, well, if you're bad, just lose every game. Well, why would the players care to lose every game? That's not good for them and their personal brands. And the same type of deal of, okay, well, where they're not going to have any competitive pride, you're saying, up until a certain point, and then that's going to switch. It doesn't make sense to me. I've heard cut it off at March 1st, and now the rest of the year doesn't matter in terms of your losses, so go be competitive. But what does that do necessarily? What if there's a team that's 11th in the lottery odds in March 1st, and now they turn it on late, they make the play-in tournament, they make the playoffs, and they get the number 1 pick? Well, that doesn't solve now the competitive balance in the NBA. So I don't know if there's a definitive answer other than the fact of what the egregious tanking and what we saw the Utah Jazz get fined $500,000 for. I think that's where you just have to find punishments for that to make sure that those do not happen. The blatant, directly in your face, sitting entire guys for entire fourth quarters. And it's more than just Utah that's done it. They're just the ones that have gotten the harshest punishment so far this year. It's a loaded draft class. I think every time there's a loaded draft class, you see more and more teams recognize it. And especially once these guys start playing at the level that they have in the college ranks, they're going to start going all in to try to secure their services. But at the same time, I'm not really sure that there's a direct answer to say, well, hey, you can't do that. You're going to tell coaches, well, don't put you can't put those guys in right now. That's a coaching decision. That's all they're going to argue. So no, I don't have an answer. The answer is to try to sit back and hopefully enjoy what you can.
Yeah. So if you're in Neverland like this in Washington, we'll see what the 3 years of tanking mean. I mean, I guess because it's been so awful for 3 seasons that if they're a playoff team next year, people will go, whoa, look at that. But then in order to get that third superstar, if you have to, you got to be bad again. And there just really isn't a way around this. And the free agent route, does it ultimately lead you back to the premier team? Now, Boston's doing it with, Jason Tatum's hurt, and they're still doing it. So I don't know. But there does not seem to be an answer. Old and young, both throwing up their palms and going, well, yeah, maybe it just is what it is. Coming up, Win the Dunk Contest was not only super, it was won by Superman. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
If you're just jumping in your car, I mentioned the origin of the Slam Dunk Contest early in the show. It's in the documentary series Soul Power about the ABA, and it's on Prime. Well done. It has some things that are missing, including Peter Vesey. And the reason, I'm told, is Vesey turned it down. He at one point had a great relationship with Julius Erving. There was a Rucker League team where Peter Vesey was a player coach. He was a tough guy, he's a Green Beret, and Julius Erving played in the Rucker League, played summer league ball on the hard cement playgrounds in Harlem. Different era, different time, but they were very, very close friends, and I think they were in each other's weddings. And I guess there's been some type of a fracture there, and Vesey does not appear. I don't think there's anybody who could speak about the ABA like he did. They had Bob Ryan. Bob Ryan really didn't cover the ABA. He covered the Celtics. He's aware of the ABA and one of the great basketball historians. but there were some things missing. But they did talk about the origin of the dunk contest, and it was necessity, the mother of invention here, because the league was hemorrhaging money in '76. They had to have a merger because there was, when you have salary wars like they had, teams just couldn't afford it. Several teams folded up, and they were down to 7 teams when the league finally went out of business, and there were only 4 that merged. So 3 of them dropped out. But in that last All-Star game in '76, they needed something for halftime. They couldn't spend any money, so they came up with a dunk contest, and Dr. J won that. So leagues merge, it folds in with the All-Star game in the NBA, and there were some great moments like when 5'6" Spud Webb won. They did away with it for a little while in the 90s. Then they bring it back in 2000, and Vince Carter re-energizes it with that incredible dunk that he had when his entire arm went in the basket. By 2001, they had it here as with the All-Star game in D.C., and I went with my son. It was bad. Stromile Swift won, and it was a snooze fest. And it's had some ups and its downs. It had ups, and no pun intended, or pun intended, depending what you like. 2008. Now, that's a long time ago. We're going back 18 years. I can't believe it's been this long. But in 2008, the winner of the slam dunk contest was Superman himself, Dwight Howard, who told Rich Eisen the story of winning. As you remember, he wore the Superman outfit, including the cape, and told Rich Eisen last week about the story behind the music and winning the dunk contest in 2008.
So I had been practicing dunks for maybe 2-3 years.
Yeah.
I would travel to different gymnasiums around and try dunks for people. And then my last dunk practice was with my teammates in Orlando. And I was like, man, what if I jump from the free throw line and somebody throw me a pass over the goal and I dunk it? And so they was like, that'd be fire. And so Jameer, he did the pass, he threw it. And the same way I did it in the actual dunk contest, I threw it in and dunked it. Everybody went crazy.
Yeah.
And it was like, yo, you really like Superman. Like, this is awesome. You got to do this in the dunk contest. So I think it's Thursday night before the dunk contest. I have a conversation with Grant Hill, and then Shaq says you got to show people your personality.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, you know what? If I do this dunk, I got to have a costume. My cousin, he went to Party City and found the biggest Superman costume he could find, which was only a large. So if you can go back and look at the pictures, the top is so tight because it's a onesie.
Looks like a bib.
Yeah, it's a onesie. We had to cut the bottom off because it was like boots and everything, and I had to tie it around like a onesie. And we got out there, and I wanted to let my personality shine through.
Mm-hmm.
And the dunk, it just was.
Look at that.
And every time I look at that picture, I just look at all the people's faces in the crowd. Jason Kidd's son, if you see him at the bottom, he's like, whoa, he's going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Just to see the reactions. And then I was really, for a moment in time, doing something that I've watched on Marvel comics or watched Superman do in real life. It looked like I was really flying. So that was one of the greatest memories, ever.
Yeah, it's something that people talk about with the slam dunk contest. Dwight Howard in 2008. He came out actually 2004 out of high school. He was the year after LeBron. Didn't have a career that quite lived up to LeBron, but had a good NBA career, and at one point was considered one of the best players in the league. And he won the slam dunk contest and entered the slam dunk contest, unlike LeBron. There is a tennis story, and unless you're a real diehard tennis fan, you've probably never heard of Destiny Ava. She's from Australia. She's 25 years old, and at one point was considered to be one of the big up-and-comers. She was the first player born in the 2000s to play in the main draw of a Grand Slam. So she was, on her way to being one of the tops in the world, and she reached a career high of 147 in the world in 2017. She's currently ranked 321, so her career is on the downslide. But she did something the other day, which is unfortunately a byproduct of the intense pressure that is put on kids at a young age in this sport. She's, again, 25. She described her tennis career as her toxic boyfriend. She failed to qualify for the Australian Open singles this year, has not played since a first-round doubles loss recently. She said, "My life is not meant to be lived in misery and half-assed. My ultimate goal is to be able to wake up every day and genuinely say, I love what I do, which I think everyone deserves a chance at. I'm 25, turning 26. I feel so far behind everyone else, like I'm starting from scratch. I'm also scared, but that's better than living a life that's misaligned or being around constant comparison and losing yourself." She is of Samoan descent. She does not have the typical thin tennis body. She has, a bigger muscular body. And she, has had to deal with people, judging her based on her body. And social media is part of the problem here. And so in her post, she put, "I want to say a ginormous F you to everyone in the tennis community who's ever made me feel less than. F you to every single gambler who sent me hate or death threats. F you to the people who sit behind screens on social media, commenting on my body, my career, or whatever the F they want to nitpick. And F you to the sport that hides behind so-called class and gentlemanly values. Behind the white outfits and traditions, it's a culture that's racist, misogynistic, homophobic, and hostile towards anyone who doesn't fit the mold." She recalled being dangerously naive to the consequences of trusting the wrong people earlier in her career. And here's something that's really heartbreaking. She said she continued to play because she felt she owed it to herself and those who had helped her, and also out of fear. She said, "It took things from me," meaning tennis, "my relationship with my body, my health, my family, my self-worth. Would I do it all again? I really don't know. But one thing this sport taught me is that there's always a chance to start fresh." And that's, I guess, what she intends to do at the end of the year. But, you think of people who reach the heights, and I've mentioned this a number of times, working with Chris Cooley, who had a really outstanding career with the Redskins, made the Pro Bowl several times, made quite a bit of money playing football, and he loved football and left because of injuries. His knee just wasn't there anymore, and he had to retire, tried to make even a comeback. He missed it so much. But he said, you'd be surprised at how many guys who play in the NFL don't love football. And you think, wow, to reach the top, you'd have to love the game. No, you don't. They play because they can, because that's what they were supposed to do. Because when they were in, middle school, they were bigger, faster, and stronger than the other kids. Some of it is just, what God gives you, your heredity, whatever it is. And there are those who achieve much more than their body gives them, like a Tom Brady, who truly loved football, played it as long as he possibly could, played at 45. Now he's closing in on 50, is saying that he could possibly play if he wanted to. Those guys are different. But there are a lot of people like Destiny Ava who were playing tennis because they were supposed to, and they didn't want to let other people down, and had to deal with a whole lot of crap, being shamed for her body on social media, and gamblers who send her hate messages. I mean, it's a dirty underbelly there, and I found that to be quite a fascinating story of someone who should be enjoying the fruits of being one of the best in the world, and is leaving very bitter and hurt with what the sport did to her. My guy Doug Gottlieb, and I say that very sarcastically, I'm not a fan of his. He Cubs to Wisconsin Green Bay, not this season, but last season. And he says, I'm going to still be able to do my radio show, and I'm going to be able to coach the team. Well, you can't do both. You can't do both. And ultimately, he found out, I can't do both. So he's given up the radio show. They were terrible last year. They won only 4 games. They're better this year. I give him that. But he's behaving like a spoiled child. This is a guy who had a radio show who I'm sure had things to say about college basketball coaches which were not complimentary. Now he's acting like he's a junior Bobby Knight, and he hasn't won Bupkis, and he's not at a school like Indiana. He's at Wisconsin Green Bay. A couple months ago, December, he tossed the chair after a loss. I don't think there's any punishment for that. And then yesterday, they lose at Milwaukee 75-72, and there were some calls at the end of the game that he didn't like. Every coach deals with that. And he got a technical foul. And he chose to use his entire news conference, which lasted less than 3 minutes, to rant, complain, whine that he didn't get this call.
I did not curse. I was not demonstrative. I did not leave my box. All I said was, that's the same play as the other end. Okay? All we ask is that there's a fair game. That's what we ask. Okay, CJ O'Hara goes and gets an offensive rebound. Their player dives at his legs. CJ gets called for a foul. I need Donnie at the league and the new commissioner to explain to me the disparity in the officiating. That's what I need explained to me. I got no problem with their team, their staff. They played hard. They did what they do. They play tough and they play aggressive. I need somebody to explain to me, okay, how just those two. There's others that I have massive issues with, okay? Others that have mesh, including every time we touched them, there was a foul in the second half. The last play of the game, just to get the ball, they're grabbing us and holding us. Okay, and I understand. If you're not calling that, that's fine. You had the exact same play at both ends in the last play of the game. The exact same play. The exact same play. So I need the new commissioner of the Horizon League to explain to me what a technical foul is when I don't leave the box, I don't curse, I'm not demonstrative. Okay, there was nothing that should have been called a technical foul. I know when I earned one. I did not earn one. Okay, and the CJ play, we're up 6 points. That dramatically changed the trajectory of the game. He's our best defender. He's one of our best players. He picked up his 4th foul, collecting an offensive rebound when a guy falls into his legs. Okay, all we ever ask is fair. Okay, and I'm not talking about 37 to 18 in free throw attempts. That's how they play. They shoot it and go get it. Fine, whatever. Okay, what I'm asking is 3 things. Okay, I'm asking how it's technical foul when I don't curse. Okay, when I wasn't demonstrative, because you're not allowed to point to the screen or mime something that's happening. Didn't do that. Didn't leave the coaching box. Wasn't on the floor. Those are all the things you get technical foul for. Not saying that's the same call at the other end. Okay, and CJ O'Hara collecting an offensive rebound, and what's the freshman? He's a good player. Steve Elam diving for the loose ball. Okay, and falling into his legs, and CJ O'Hara gets called for a foul. Okay, and then the last play of the game, which I'm willing to say, hey, our end, you don't want to call foul? All right, kind of drove into traffic, whatever. It's the exact same play as the other end. Could not be more similar. And yet every time they drove in there, it was a foul, and every time we did, it was mixed. It was mixed.
Did you get any explanation?
Nope. And King Whetstone called the technical foul. He avoided me the rest of the game. That's not right. Okay, I was not combative in any way. Okay, I did not curse one single time. I was not on the court one single time. I was not out of my box one single time. I was not on the court one single time. You tell me. Okay, that's all I'm asking. Anyway, what else? Thanks.
Yeah, then he left. Okay. Get over yourself. Really. Hey, you got a bad call. So you got to have a big thing at a press conference and pound your fists on the table and drop an F-bomb. Grow up, really. I mean, Bobby Knight had built some equity winning national championships before he reached full jerkdom. And when he threw the chair, he had 2. You got none, and you're coaching at Wisconsin Green Bay, so stop. And then you have Jerome Tang, who I was somewhat sympathetic to. This was last week when they lost a game at home to Cincinnati, and he went off on his players. These are players that he recruited, but they didn't perform for him, and had this to say at his news conference, which went viral.
Hey, I'm gonna honor Christ like I always do. Blessed to do this, but this was embarrassing. These dudes do not deserve to wear this uniform. There will be very few of them in it next year. I'm embarrassed for the university. I'm embarrassed for our fans, our student section. It is just ridiculous. We got practice at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, and we will get this thing right. I have no answer, no words. So y'all got 2 questions. So whoever want to ask 2 questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability right now. But right now, I'm pissed, and this is all right. questions.
I guess it's just kind of puzzling if you look at your road and home splits. The last 4 road games have been down the wire, and run off the court. Just kind of explain that.
Yeah, I don't know. I asked the staff this week that same question, and they said that more the opponents. You play. I don't know, because I followed Minnesota last year closely, and they played great on the road and struggled at home. So then they started staying in hotels at home, like treating it like a road game. And so I even talked about, hey, do we need to change that change? But no, none of that crap matter, man. These dudes got to have some. They got some pride, man. They got some pride. It means something to wear a K-State uniform. It means something to put on this purple, man. Our everything this university is about and all that it's been about. Why I love this place, man. They don't love this place, so they don't deserve to be here.
Just what did you make of the student section with paper bags on their heads?
Yeah, I'd wear a paper bag too if I was them. Thanks a lot, fellas. God bless.
And then he left. So he was supporting the students wearing paper bags. That was what led to his firing. That's what the university heard. That's what they decided was the last straw, and they booted him out. They booted him out yesterday with $18.5 million left on a contract, which he was able to negotiate because this is his 4th year on the job after leading the team to the Elite Eight, winning 26 games in his first year. Things went south, as they do now in college basketball. Guys leave whenever they go where the money is, and you try and bring in good players, and you pay them a lot of money. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So they decided to get rid of him. Okay, they should have done that because this was a Thursday night game. They should have done that on Friday. No. They let him go to the University of Houston, ranked number 3 in the country, where they lost, but they were a little more competitive. Number 3 team on the road. They lost by 14 points, 78-64. He said his players don't deserve to wear the uniform, so he did something that I think Mike Krzyzewski might have done, but Mike Krzyzewski was Duke basketball, so nobody's going to say anything. He didn't do it, but I could see him doing it. He took the nameplates off the players, so they wore uniforms at Houston, which didn't have the names on the back of the jersey. So the school released him yesterday for, quote, public comments in addition to the program's overall direction. The decision was made in the best interest of our university and men's basketball program, said the athletic director, Gene Taylor. We wish Coach Tang and his family all the best moving forward. So they have attempted to fire him with cause with $18.5 million left on his contract. He said in a statement, Tang, I'm deeply disappointed with the university's decision and strongly disagree with the characterization of my termination. I have always acted with integrity and faithfully fulfilled my responsibilities as a head coach. So, they don't want to pay the money. They don't want to pay it. So they're trying to fire him with cause for a post-game rant. I don't think it's going to work that way. I think this thing is going to wind up in court. Now, some of the things he said, were they warranted or not, I don't know. But he was honest. His team stunk. They are being paid money. They're paid professionals now. And he didn't name any player by name. He just said as a team. If that embarrassed the university, well, you should be embarrassed by this. Is that you're agreeing to pay these guys all this amount of money, and the athletic director who announced the firing, he's got to be on board with that. And the team stinks. And this is the roulette wheel of college basketball these days. If you get the right players in there, then you can win. Look, Indiana football, the same thing. They happened to hit on the right coach getting the right players, some of whom had been in his system for quite a while. He took them with him from James Madison. We'll see what happens moving forward. I still think he's a great coach. But this is how college sports works now. It's all year to year, and either everything lines up right, the $2 million players that you bring in are really good, or in this case, I think they had a foreign player who was like making $2.5 million. It didn't work out. They stink. And so to get out of at least some of the money, they try to fire the coach with cause. I don't think this is going to stand up. I don't think what he said, whether you found it distasteful or embarrassing to the university, I don't think that was past the smell test. and he will be fired with cause, and the university won't have to pay the money. They'll negotiate something. Maybe he doesn't get all the $18.5 million, but he'll get the money quietly, and they'll make this thing go away. Otherwise, this is going to be another landmark case for college sports now that, when you want to get rid of somebody, you can just say, well, we're doing it with cause. No, you can't. No, doesn't work that way. All right, that does it for me. Bram is coming up next. I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.